The modern seed industry sells you the same lie every year. Your plants die, you buy again, you replant again. The cycle never ends because it was designed never to end. Every commercial annual variety in every pollinator mix, every vegetable starter pack, every prepackaged herb collection was selected by breeders who understood one thing above all others. A plant that dies at the end of the season is a plant that must be purchased at the beginning of the next one. On Amish farms across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, that cycle has not existed since 1800. The plants established by a great-great-grandfather in the 1820s are still growing today. They drop their own seed into the surrounding soil. They multiply from the root crown every spring without any intervention. They come back from winter not weakened, but stronger, the root system larger and deeper than the year before. Nobody replanted them. Nobody repurchased them. Nobody even thought about them between October and April because they did not require thinking about. And the seed industry has never told you their names, because the day it does, it has nothing left to sell you. The plants the Amish selected for permanent establishment on their farms were not chosen by aesthetics, by catalog description, or by what was available at a market. They were chosen by a single criterion, applied consistently across generations. Does this plant return stronger next year without any help from me? That criterion eliminated the entire category of annual plants that modern garden retail is built around, and left a specific group of species that share three biological characteristics. They are deeply rooted, root systems that extend far below the frost line, storing energy through winter and re-emerging from the same crown each spring without any replanting. They are genetically variable within a population, not the uniform clones of commercial seed production, but populations with enough individual variation that they bloom in rolling waves across 6 to 8 weeks, rather than in a single compressed spike, and that include individuals adapted to a range of soil, moisture, and temperature conditions. And they propagate through multiple mechanisms simultaneously, dropping viable seed, spreading through underground runners, and expanding the root crown outward each season, so that no single failure of any one propagation method eliminates the plant from the farm. A plant that checks all three criteria is a plant the seed industry cannot profit from after the first season. A plant that fails any one of them is a plant that generates repeat revenue. The Amish selection process, applied across 2 centuries of farm observation, produced a plant palette that the seed industry has spent a century working to replace with something that requires an annual transaction. The first category of plants the Amish maintained for permanent establishment was the deep-rooted native perennials, species whose root systems extend so far below the soil surface that no winter frost, no summer drought, and no surface disturbance can kill them. These are plants that the modern landscaping industry categorizes as aggressive, invasive, or difficult to remove, which is precisely the quality that made them invaluable on a farm that was trying to never replant anything. Purple coneflower, Echinacea, was established on virtually every Amish farm from the earliest settlement period, not primarily as a medicinal plant, though its medicinal applications were well understood, but as a permanent flowering infrastructure that required nothing after the first planting. A single established Echinacea crown will produce for 20 to 30 years from the same root, blooming reliably each July and August, dropping hundreds of viable seeds each autumn that germinate and establish in the surrounding disturbed soil without any intervention. After 1 decade on a farm, a single original planting of Echinacea becomes a self-sustaining colony. After 2 decades, it has colonized every fence corner and disturbed soil edge it can reach. The original plant cost 1 planting. The colony it produced has cost nothing since. Wild bergamot, bee balm in its native form, not the cultivated ornamental varieties that require division and replacement, behaves identically. 1 planting becomes a spreading colony through underground rhizomes that advance outward from the original location at several inches per year, requiring no division, no replanting, no fertilization, and no management beyond the simple decision not to remove it. The second category was the self-seeding biennials and short-lived perennials, plants that do not live indefinitely from the same root, but that drop so many viable seeds each autumn that they effectively behave as permanent residents of any location where they have been established. These plants fill the gap between the long-lived perennials and the annual vegetables, providing a bridge of permanent flowering and food production that requires no replanting because the plant itself handles the replanting through seed distribution. Black-eyed Susan, Rudbeckia in its native form, is the most practical example. It completes its full life cycle in 2 years. The first year, establishing a root crown and leaf rosette. The second year, blooming, seeding, and dying. But the seeds it drops in year 2 are so numerous and so reliably viable that the plant appears to return every year in the same location and in the surrounding area. From the farmer's perspective, a black-eyed Susan planting is permanent. From the botanical perspective, it is a continuously self-replacing population. The practical outcome is identical in both cases. The plant is always there, it never requires replanting, and its distribution area expands modestly each year as some seeds germinate beyond the original planting boundary. Phacelia, native wild Phacelia, not the ornamental annual varieties, behaves the same way. It was maintained on Amish farms as a critical early spring nectar source that opened before most other plants and seeded forward so aggressively that once established, it was effectively impossible to remove without active effort. The Amish did not want to remove it. They had selected it precisely because it could not be stopped. The third category was the vegetatively spreading ground covers. Plants that expand their territory not through seed, but through underground runners, root division, and above-ground stolons that root wherever they contact moist soil. These plants were the Amish solution to the problem of bare ground. The exposed soil between plants, along path edges, and in low-traffic areas that in a modern garden is either mulched with purchased material or left to weeds. The Amish solution was to fill that ground with plants that wanted to fill it and could not be stopped from doing so. Native white clover was the primary ground cover on every Amish farm, not as a deliberate planting in most cases, but as a managed volunteer. A plant that arrived on its own through grazing animal traffic and was then deliberately retained and encouraged in every location where bare ground appeared. Clover spreads through above-ground stolons that root at every node, advancing several inches per week during the growing season, colonizing disturbed soil faster than any weed. It fixes nitrogen from the atmosphere into the soil as it spreads, improving the ground it colonizes rather than depleting it. It provides nectar from spring through autumn in staggered waves from a genetically diverse population. And it thrives under exactly the kind of low-level disturbance, foot traffic, occasional mowing, grazing, that eliminates most other plants. Creeping thyme behaved identically on drier farm zones, and native mints occupied the wetter margins near water sources, both advancing at their own pace into every available bare ground zone, without any assistance and without any purchase after the first establishment. The autumn management of this entire plant system was the single most counterintuitive aspect of the Amish approach, and it is the practice that most directly contradicts everything contemporary garden advice recommends. Modern gardening instruction tells you to clean up in autumn, cut back the dead stems, remove the dried seed heads, clear the beds for a tidy winter appearance. Every one of those actions, applied to a self-renewing plant system, is an act of deliberate sabotage. The dried stems of a self-seeding perennial or biennial are not debris. They are next year's seed bank, standing upright and waiting for winter weathering to open them and spring moisture to germinate the seeds they release. Remove them in October, and you have guaranteed a seed purchase in March. The dead root crowns of a deep-rooted perennial are not failures. They are the biological storage systems that will re-emerge with the first consistent soil warmth of spring, requiring no replanting, no transplanting, no purchased replacement. Disturb them with autumn soil preparation, and you have interrupted a root system that was spending the dormant season expanding its lateral reach. The advancing runners of the spreading ground covers are not weeds escaping their boundaries. They are the plant performing the only function that makes it valuable, colonizing new ground on your behalf at zero cost. Remove them from the path edge in October because they look untidy and you have eliminated 3 weeks of spring expansion that would have been delivered for free. The Amish autumn practice was restraint. Walk through the garden, confirm that everything is where it should be, take any seeds that need deliberate redistribution, and leave the rest entirely alone until April. The question every farmer and gardener asks when they first encounter this system is the same one: how do I start? The answer from 2 centuries of Amish practice is the same one that appears in every other historically grounded management system. Start with what is already there. Walk the perimeter of your property before you open a catalog, before you visit a garden center, before you make any purchase at all. Every plant that is returned to the same location for 3 or more consecutive years without any assistance from you is already a candidate for your permanent plant palette. It has already passed the selection filter. It has already demonstrated its ability to survive your specific winters, your specific soil, your specific drainage patterns. Divide it, extend it into adjacent zones, Collect its seed in late summer and scatter it into locations where you want new establishment. This costs nothing, and it begins the system with the most site-adapted genetic material available, the plants that have already proven themselves in your specific conditions. After the existing survivors have been identified and extended, add the deep-rooted perennials that are most likely to thrive in your region: echinacea and wild bergamot for most of temperate North America, native asters and goldenrod for the late season, phacelia for early spring. Establish them once in the correct location, leave them undisturbed through their first winter, and do not touch them until they show you what they intend to become. The system does not require expertise. It requires patience and the willingness to let go of the control that the seed industry has taught you to believe is necessary for a productive garden. The Amish learned that lesson not through philosophy, but through economics. They could not afford to replant every year, so they built a system that did not require it. That constraint, applied consistently across 200 years, produced something the seed industry has never been able to replicate: a garden that improves every year without any new investment and that keeps feeding families through every season that arrives, good or bad, wet or dry, cold or warm, exactly as it was designed to do.